I describe it as I got to the point where I basically lost control of myself. And I don't say that as in I was running down the streets with my top off, you know. But in terms of like I was doing things that I couldn't afford to do, buying things I couldn't afford to buy. There was no like control. And I've always, obviously as an athlete, we're very regimented. So I lost all that and I didn't know what I was doing day to day. And I don't know, like I just let everything overbear me. And I got to the point where I'd had so much pain inside of me that I'd held in for so long that I just didn't want to feel like that anymore. And then that day that they talk about in the book is I had had enough. At that point, maybe you could say I had a suicidal moment, but it wasn't like I want to die. It was like I've had enough of feeling like this and I can't feel like this anymore. And so I hit rock bottom and like 10 seconds after it happened, no, it was probably a bit longer than that, but it felt like 10 seconds because everything was just rushing around in my head. I just remember being like, I don't want to die, and then having to call the ambulance and get the advice on how to get to the hospital the quickest, and it was traumatic, and I think the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through, worse than anything that happened to me that was out of my control almost. Like this was in my control, and I think that's why it was so traumatic. And the first thing I felt the next day when I woke up after being in the hospital and getting sorted out, I was like, I just feel guilty. And I felt guilty that I'd done it to myself, but I felt guilty that it could traumatize people around me. I felt guilty that everyone in the public seen me as this strong, determined athlete, and I've got to the point in my life where I've cut myself that badly and given up. You know, and I've never been someone that gave up. It's all been a very ongoing journey, and it's still ongoing. And I talk now how I'm like 6 months self-harm free now, which is massive for me because it was daily, you know. And I compare it to, I don't think it's different to drug abuse, alcoholism, gambling addiction, you know, all these coping mechanisms and addictions people have. They're not the right way to deal with things. And that's not me telling someone off who has those issues or saying, like, you know, it's not good enough what you're doing, but it isn't the right way to be dealing with things.
The title is Resilience. Obviously you chose that for a reason. Is that because that's how you see yourself?
It's a difficult one actually, because I do think I have, but on many days I'll still sit there and think I'm weak, you know, and that I shouldn't have let things affect me the way they did. And I actually hit a very, very low point in April this year and went into a similar experience. And from that moment, because it had happened the second time, I was like, no, that's it now, you know, this is not. And there was reason behind it. I went through a massive trauma and a massive loss. But from that point, I've really turned around, like really, really turned around, because I really scared myself and I felt, you know, the guilt all over again. And at this point, I was well enough to understand, actually, that's not how the road to go down and how to deal with it. And
Is self-harming a common problem among athletes, do you think?
I think it's a lot more of a common problem than people realise, and even athlete to athlete realises. I think we all put on a persona of not being broken by anything, especially on social media, to each other, and that's one thing I've not done, obviously, is I've just been very honest. And but no, I think there's a lot higher than people think it is, and I know personally at least 3 or 4 people that I'm aware of that have done it or do it. And a lot of athletes end up with self-harm rather than, say, the alcohol and drug abuse, is because you can't. You know, like, you wouldn't be able to train if you were drinking all the time. You wouldn't be able to be on drugs because you get banned. And so systematically, and the way we were brought up, it's not the lifestyle we are in. So I think that's why a lot of athletes tend to self-harm rather than going down those routes. But I don't see them as actually different from the experience of it all. So
what stops you now if you have a feeling like that or an urge like that?
I'll sit down normally and write down kind of, why am I feeling like this? And then rationalise that point, because it'll be like, it could be a bunch of things. It could be someone said something. And I can be like that some days. And someone can say some rubbish comment to me and I can be like, the whole world hates me. And I just might have taken it the wrong way. It might have been a joke. It might have been a comment made to the group that I've taken personally. Or, you know, someone's got road rage at me in the car. And I'm like, what have I done? And I think, like, in those situations, you write down what happened, and then you have to look at, actually, is this actually an issue first? And if it's not, then you go, right, okay, my brain's overthinking this, and it's linking back to something else that's happened in the past and made me feel like this, and understanding that it's just a feeling and it's not real. But if it is a real thing, then it's rationalising it down to, firstly, if it's not your fault, then actually it's probably because this person's had a bad day. Or you go, okay, it is my fault. In the future, what can I do differently to handle that better, or not repeat that behaviour? And I think just going through that little process of, it's like a 5-minute mind map almost, then I can get to the rational point of how to be better next time. And normally going through that process, because I'm processing what's going on in the information rationally, then actually by the end you feel a lot better anyway.
So you've obviously reached quite a good place at the moment. Are you not nervous that by exposing yourself to the Olympics that this might trigger a whole cycle again?
Yep. It's a big fear that's been mine, and it's been also within the group that look after me. You know, they have asked, especially after what happened in April, you know, is this the right idea? Should we do this? If it goes wrong, are you going to be okay out there? And, you know, we've gone through this, and I would lie if it didn't scare me and I didn't worry. And I think it's realistic to go, probably would set me back. But I also think, you know, the thing that has driven me all this time, and it has developed me mentally, is the fact that I help others. And it's, for me, saving one life is way bigger deal than winning an Olympic medal now. Whereas if you'd asked me that 4 years ago, I'd been like, no, this Olympic medal is everything. And it still is everything, but I'm way more driven by the fact that I can actually help people's lives and make them better. And I think for me, if I didn't go, it would look like mental health. I'd given up and let the negative side of mental health finish me. And it's not what I want. I want to go into this Olympics and go, whether I win a medal or not, after what happened, I hit the lowest point, you know, nearly died, went through whatever, and I still came back and did it, because that shows that people can do it.
Obviously, everyone will hope that you go there and it's a great success and you're on the podium. But if that isn't the case, do you think you are now strong enough to cope with if you had a repeat of what happened in Korea?
Yeah, I am strong enough to deal with it. I think before, the way I was viewing things, and maybe the program set around me was viewing things, was this needs to happen. It has to be a medal. Because the first thing is, at that point, I was basically trying to fund an entire program. And that's not trying to put anyone else down, but all the pressure was put on me to get this medal, to keep this program funded. The nice bit about it now is I am the only funded one, and it's not my funding, it's a medal sport plan funding, but it's all based around me. So I've only got my own pressure to deal with now, not the external pressure of this entire team. So that makes it nicer. But then the other thing for me is, like, I have a great team around me, and because I'm in this medal sport plan, they are very, it's very different. I'm very close with them all, and they have put plans and strategies in place already for, like, worst case scenario. And
from where you're sitting today, what would success be at the Olympics? Would it be getting a medal, or would it actually just being there and coming away happy?
Getting through a distance. I've never finished a distance at the Olympic Games.
Are there people close to you, Elise, who would rather you weren't going?
I don't know if you'd say, well, there's probably one or two that would rather I didn't. There's quite a few who would support it if I didn't. You know, there's a lot of people that go, you know, is you sure? You know, I'll support you either way. And then there's people that probably don't know me very well that are like, you need to go, you need to get this medal, you know, and you get all that kind of mix from people around you. And the people who really understand me and know me well are kind of the ones that sit there and go, we want you to go, I want you to finish this properly, but we'll support you if you don't. Like I said, I'd lie if there wasn't people that were worried and I wasn't worried. Like, I think it's normal after what happened last time. But yeah. yeah, it's hopefully going to be a very different outcome this time.
Part of that was some of the online abuse that happened afterwards. Do you think you could cope with that now if that happened?
Yeah, that's a big learning. I think obviously Sochi and Pyeongchang were quite different because Sochi was more like bullying and probably more like, you know, scary, I suppose, because it was platforms were quite new, and I didn't know if death threats were legitimate or not, and that's where my anxiety came from.
Do you think the social media companies at the time you were getting all that abuse were supportive enough of you? Do you think they do protect people like you?
No, I don't think they protect anyone. Or I think they're driven by advertising and money, you know. And I think they say they try to do stuff, but actually, like I got banned from Facebook, my personal private Facebook, for posting an image of scarring on my arm and going not against self-harm, but being like, look, we don't want to do this, but like a positive post about suicide awareness on a suicide, and they banned me from Facebook, so I had to create an account. And it's like, you ban me, but then there's all these people that are doing disgusting things. Like, these people aren't getting banned. I sit there and I'm just like, you're obviously, whatever you're using to like almost knuckle things down isn't working, because you're not getting the right people. And so no, I think at the time it was really bad, and I don't think it's loads better now. I think that they should be doing more.
Do you think you would be in a different place, or you would have got to a different place quicker had they protected you at that time?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have seen the extent of abuse that I had to deal with. But I can also openly say that as a child, growing up in school and being bullied, if that bullying had come home to me, as in like what kids nowadays have to deal with, I probably wouldn't be here, because I didn't cope with the day-to-day bullying at school, but I could come home and get away from it, and I had a nice, you know, mum and brother, and I didn't have to go on my phone and be like, oh God, they're carrying on, you know, and I don't know how kids do it. I think it's awful.
And on that point, what would you say to those who did abuse you, people who'd never met you before in their lives, might not have even seen you at all, but what would you say to those people? Do you think most of them understand the serious harm, the serious damage they can do?
The actual damage that was done to me wasn't just what you said. It was like, this is everything I have. This is everything I've worked for. This is the only thing I've ever done with my life, and the only thing that ever made me feel like I had a worth. And you've taken that away from me. And I just felt like nothing, you know, and I didn't understand how people could be so horrible. And it wasn't just, you know, a little bit of silly abuse. It was like atrocious, some of the things. And, you know, it didn't just harm me, it harmed my mum. You know, like, how would your mum feel if she sees that you've been talked about that way? And the whole thing was just, yeah, it hurts people more than they think it does.
And the companies could do something about that. They could stop that, stop you seeing it in the first place.
Well, the first thing is they could filter it for sure, and then they could send out warnings to people that if they carry on behaving like that, and then ban them. I mean, they banned me within 24 hours of posting a self-harm image. Like, so they can do this stuff, and I think they know they don't, because they know it grows the popularity, because then you'll get people arguing, because some people will be on your side, some people might not be on your side but won't think that what the person said's right, and then you just get these people that are just trying to wind everyone else up. And they're the ones that I don't bite to anymore. You know, the ones that just try and wind you up, and which ones don't. But yeah, there definitely could be a lot more done about it.
Do you ever look at your scars and to remind you that that's a place you don't want to go back to?
Scars. I always find this one interesting. I hate them. And if I post about them, people are always like, you should be so proud of them. Like, I hate them. And I get why you should be proud and not hate them. And this is not me telling everyone else to hate theirs and not be proud of them. Like, you should be, that you survived and you stopped. But, you know, like the amount of people that... I remember this kid coming up to me once, little girl, and she was like, how did you get the scars on your arm? And I'm just like, I made up this story about getting attacked by a pirate who had a claw for a hand, you know. One of those things, got like a hook for a hand. But they do, like, when things have been bad since April, when I've got like a bit bad, I've looked and gone, I don't want more of these. I did get a tattoo done recently, this is a suicide prevention charity where her daughter committed suicide, so she set up a charity, and then I just did the lifeline to carry on life, like carry on living. So like you said, like that tattoo was my point where I went, right, that's, like you said, who I was, this is who I am now, and I don't do this anymore. I don't deal with it that way anymore.